Well, hello there. Today we're going to present the very first segment of our Evidence 3, in which we will talk a little bit about the organs in the male reproductive system, as you can see here, and also the path that the sperms follow to be expelled from the male reproductive system. Now, I actually labeled the urinary bladder, but it turns out it has absolutely nothing to do with sexual reproduction, so just ignore it. I'm sorry. Anyways, first off, we have the testes, which are circle-shaped, and these produce sperm and other sexual hormones, and they are located inside the scrotum, which is this little layer right here, and the scrotum is basically the outer skin layer that covers the testes, and it helps regulate their temperature either by pulling them close to the body or farther off. You know, we have seen this in like the way when it is really cold, the testicles like seem to contract, and when it is hot outside, they hang. That's basically their function. They regulate their temperature by rising them or letting them hang. The epididymis is this tightly coiled duct outside of the testes, and these actually aid sperm maturity. Basically, when sperms go through it, they increase their maturity and therefore increase their fertility. Now if we go all the way up here, and then here, we're gonna find the vas deferens, that thing. And it basically is the end of the ductus deferens, which is simply the duct that carries the sperm all the way into the seminal vesicle. Lie at the base of the urinary bladder, and there's actually multiple of these, there's two. Each one has a duct that joins vas deferens and the urethra. As you can see here, the ejaculatory duct. And the ejaculatory duct connects the urethra to the vas deferens, so sperm and semen can go through it. The prostate gland surrounds the upper part of the urethra, which is this part right here, that also contains the ejaculatory duct. And it is a little donut-shaped organ that lies just below the urinary bladder. Now, bulbourethral gland are little pea-sized glands that are located below the prostate on either side of the urethra. And these actually help the production of semen by pouring various fluids into the seminal vesicle. But we're not even there yet, hold your horses. The urethra serves merely as the duct through which sperms get expelled, and the penis is the main organ of sexual intercourse in males. It has a long shaft that is covered by a layer of foreskin. It has an extended tip covered by an additional layer of foreskin, which is called the glans penis, which is also commonly cut off for either religious reasons or whatever. This process is known as circumcision, but that's another topic. Now, as for the path that sperms take to finally be pulled out of the male reproductive system, following happens. Once a man is sexually aroused, several arteries in the penis relax and they actually get wider. Therefore, they increase the amount of blood flowing through the penis and making it larger and erect. Sperm enters the urethra through the tubus and the vas deferens. Various accessory glands like the seminal vesicle, the ejaculatory duct, the prostate gland, and the bulbourethral gland contribute by pouring different fluids into the seminal vesicle so it can produce semen. And once the semen reaches the urethra, several muscle contractions cause it to be pulled out from the penis. And these muscle contractions are actually part of the male orgasm. During ejaculation, a sphincter closes off the urinary bladder in a way that no urine enters the urethra and no semen enters the urinary bladder, therefore maintaining a stable ejaculation. So, I think that's it.
Follicle-stimulating hormone promotes the production of sperm in seminiferous tubules. Luteinizing hormone promotes the production of testosterone by interstitial cells. Testosterone helps the development and functioning of the male sex organ, and it also causes and maintains the male secondary sex characteristics that develops puberty. The follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone are produced in the anterior pituitary gland, while testosterone is produced in the gonads. Most of the hormones mentioned before are controlled by a negative feedback system, but if an event occurs like puberty, they can now be controlled by a positive feedback system.
The cervix function resides on passing the menstrual flow from the uterus to the vagina, and during intercourse, the function of it resides on leading the sperm into the uterus. Moving on to our next organ, people relate the trumpet to this organ because of its name, the fallopian tube. It is actually kind of related to it. No, actually not. The fallopian tube, it's in charge of the receiving of sperm, and then it transports the fertilized egg through the uterus in order to implant it. Now we're going to talk about the uterus. The uterus' main function is to store and feed a fetus while growing. Through the female reproductive tract, ovaries release oocytes each menstrual cycle. It also is in charge of the production of hormones called estrogen and progesterone. Endometrium is the place in which the embryo is guarded when implantation happens after the fertilization. It is also part of the placenta formed through the gland and blood vessels within it. The placenta then allows oxygen and nutrients for the embryo and fetus. Endometrium also takes part in the responsibility for the menstrual cycle as a blood vessel-rich glandular tissue layer. It helps the menstrual flow to get out of the body during menstruation through the vagina, the cervical mucus, which is secreted from the uterus during the pre-ovulation and post-ovulation. It is also the canal from which the fetus is being expelled, and it also gets rid of the placenta. Female external genitals. The female external genital parts are formed by the mons pubis, glans clitoris, labium majora, and labium minora, the opening of urethra, and opening of the vagina. The fertilization happens on the fallopian tube. The sperm reaches the ovum, and the ovum changes so no other sperm can reach it and start the developing cycle. The oocyte is produced in the external layer of the ovary within the follicle. The egg reaches the fallopian tube by its highly ciliated walls. The oocyte passes through the fallopian tube. When the mature egg is already on the uterine tube, the contractions of the smooth musculature of the tubular wall is swept off to the uterus.
The female reproductive system is made up by different hormones that are in charge of producing certain functions of the body. Let's put it this way. The hormones represent a traffic light that gives signals for the reproductive system so it can carry out different functions and move on. The endocrine system takes part in this system as it contains two main glands, the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, that are in charge of releasing the hormones necessary for carrying out the functions of the reproductive system. In the end, it is thanks to these hormones that women experience their ovarian cycle. There are 5 hormones that have great roles in regulating the female reproductive system. Here they are going to be presented. Take notice in that each of the hormones carry out a specific function in the reproductive system. If one of them is missing, the reproductive system will not be completed. Number 1. GnRH. The gonadotropin-releasing hormone is produced by the hypothalamus. Its main function is to give signal to the hormones called follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Without its presence, these hormones will not be called into action. FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. This hormone is produced by the pituitary gland found in the brain. This hormone is present mainly on the first half of the menstrual cycle. It is in charge of fueling the main development of ovarian follicle maturation, and it is due to this hormone that ovums are produced. Number 3. LH, luteinizing hormone. The luteinizing hormone is also produced by the pituitary gland. It is in charge of producing estrogen and progesterone in the female body. This hormone is present during the cycle of ovulation. Number 4. Estrogen. This reproductive hormone is produced by the ovaries of non-pregnant women. It is one of the main catalysts of ovum maturation during each menstrual cycle. Number 5. Progesterone. Progesterone is produced by the corpus luteum of the ovum. This hormone has the function of preparing the endometrium of the uterus as an assistant in the development and passing of a fertilized ovum in the uterus. In order to understand the female reproductive system completely, we must take a look at the two main cycles that occur in this system. The ovarian cycle and the uterine cycles are the ones that are now going to be explained. As we explained, the relation between each cycles and the hormones mentioned before will be more notorious. The ovarian cycle. The reproductive systems always seem to be preparing for the fertilization of an ovum. In the previous cycle you didn't get pregnant? No problem, we'll start the cycle all over again until you do so. It is kind of complicated to completely understand in which phase of the ovarian cycle a woman is located, but we can get an estimate by paying attention to how our body has been acting. The ovarian cycle is a main cycle involved in the maturation of an ovum. In this cycle, the ovums become prepared for fertilization as well as preparing the uterus for the arrival of unfertilized egg to accommodate itself in the uterus. An estimated ovarian cycle lasts for about 28 days, but for some other women, the lasting of the cycle may be different. There are two main important phases in the ovarian cycle. Each one counts with their approximate day counts and designated hormones that affect the ovaries. The phases are the following. The follicular phase. The follicular phase commonly lasts from day 1 to day 14 of the reproductive cycle. This phase is in charge of preparing the ovum for its maturation. Several other ovaries start to mature as well. The phase starts with the release of GnRH from the hypothalamus. This hormone later stimulates the pituitary gland so it can create the hormones FSH and LH. This hormone later signals the ovarian follicles to start the maturation of an ovum. The main ovarian follicles have immature ovaries that later mature into ovum. Usually by day 14, the last day of this phase, ovulation finally occurs. The luteal phase. The luteal phase commonly lasts from day 15 to day 28, just after ovulation occurs. In this period, the corpus luteum activity starts to increase as the uterus starts to prepare for pregnancy. The corpus luteum starts to secrete progesterone in order to provide nourishment to an upcoming embryo. The inner walls of the uterus start to thicken and become nourished for the receptive mature ovum that is going to pass through the uterus. After a certain amount of time, the progesterone levels start to increase and start to make their way through the blood. If progesterone levels start to increase and start to make aware through the blood after a certain time, this concentration will finally reach the hypothalamus. This gland will immediately stop producing the hormone of GnRH. This is an example of a negative feedback. The corpus luteum has a limited lifespan, and once it stops producing progesterone, the hypothalamus gets a signal that will make it start producing it again. These actions occur mostly on the last day of this phase. This allows the ovarian cycle to start all over again. The uterine cycle. The uterine cycle basically occurs at the same time of the ovarian cycle. In this cycle, the two main hormones, progesterone and estrogen, take part in the cyclical changes that occur in the uterus. In this cycle, menstruation is seen right at the start. As to opposed the ovarian cycle, this cycle is mainly focused in the changes that are seen during the ovarian cycle as the different processes that are involved in maturation of the ovum take place. A common uterine cycle lasts for about 28 days, but as mentioned before, some women may experience certain irregularities in the time lapse of their cycles. There are three phases involved in the cycle that take part in different chemical and hormonal changes in the uterus. The phases are the following. The menstrual phase. This phase starts from day 1 to 5. If pregnancy doesn't occur during the process of ovulation, the corpus luteum will slowly start to degenerate as the production of progesterone will slowly start to decrease. The decrease of this hormone signals the shredding of the endometrial lining that was previously seen. The muscular walls of the uterus contract, and as a result, the endometrium starts to break away from the uterus. As the endometrium was nourished by blood vessels, when it gets broken down, it gets mixed with blood fluids as it disintegrates and leaves the body to the vagina. Menstrual fluids in the main resultant of this phase. A common menstrual cycle lasts for about 3 to 5 days. The proliferative phase. This phase starts from day 6 to 14. During this period, there is seen a high concentration of estrogen in the blood. After the end of the menstrual cycle, the ovaries start to prepare for ovulation as day 14 is reached. The endometrium starts to form again as it starts to get nourished by blood vessels awaiting pregnancy and fertilization. The secretory phase. This phase starts from days 15 to 28. Blood concentration of progesterone starts to increase as new blood vessels start to be implanted into the thick wall of the endometrium in order to accept a fertilized ovum into the uterus. If there is a fertilized ovum present, it gets accumulated into the endometrium as a placenta forms that surrounds the upcoming embryo. The placenta starts to secrete a hormone known as human chronic gonadotropin HCP during pregnancy. This hormone takes part in a negative feedback system as its secretion causes the hypothalamus and pituitary glands to stop producing and releasing FSH and LSH. This causes the ceasing of ovulation during pregnancy. Relationship between the uterine and ovarian cycles. Both cycles are in charge of carrying out a specific function in the body, but they are related to each other since both cycles occur at the same time. Whilst the ovarian cycle is focused on the process of ovulation, the uterine cycle is focused mainly on the hormonal changes that accompany ovulation. They both need of each other in order to carry out the reproductive cycles. It is important to note that the hormonal changes and the creation of the endometrium during the uterine cycle aids the ovum that was matured and released in the ovarian cycle to accommodate itself in the uterus. Both of them create different organic matter that are present in the uterus.
Abstinence is the most reliable birth control method we have, and it means not engaging in any sexual contact. This form of birth control also has the advantage of preventing sexually transmitted diseases. The condom is a non-porous latex covering placed over an erect penis that prevents the sperm from reaching the female reproductive tract. Spermicides are chemicals that contain sperm-killing agents, and these can come in foams, creams, jellies, suppositories, and douches. They can make the vagina and cervix unfavorable for the survival sperm. A spermicide can be more effective when it's used with a barrier method, such as a condom. Oral contraceptive or birth control pills can prevent pregnancy. This pill is almost 100% effective, and some of the benefits is that it regulates the length of menstrual cycles and decreases the menstrual flow. This method is called the rhythm method. It involves abstaining from sexual activities on the days that ovulation is likely to occur in each reproductive cycle. The couple abstains from sexual intercourse the 3 days before ovulation, the day of ovulation, and 3 days after ovulation. This rhythm method is not very effective due to many women having irregular cycles. The IUD is a small object made of plastic, copper, or stainless steel that is inserted into the uterus by a physician. This can cause changes in the endometrium that prevents the implantation of a fertilized egg. Some women cannot use this because of discomfort, expulsion, or bleeding. Birth control skin patches contain estrogens and progestin and are placed on the skin once a week for 3 weeks. Each week, the patch is removed and a new one is placed on a different area of the skin. No patch is used during the 4 weeks so that menstruation can occur. Surgical sterilization is a procedure that makes a person unable to reproduce. This is commonly known as vasectomy, which part of each vas deferens is removed. With this method, even though sperm production continues in the testes, the sperm can no longer reach the exterior. A diaphragm is a rubber dome-shaped device that fits over the cervix and is used together with the spermicide. This can be inserted up to 6 hours before the intercourse. The diaphragm stops most sperms from passing into the cervix, and spermicide kills most of the sperm that do get by. This is mainly effective for pregnancy, but it does not fully protect against STDs because the vagina is still exposed. A female condom consists of 2 flexible rings connected by a polyethylene shed. One ring lies inside the shed and is inserted to fit over the cervix. The other ring remains outside the vagina and covers the female external genitals.